Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Tarot Deep Dive. This time we are going into the Suit of Swords of the Minor Arcana. I actually ended up processing quite a lot after that. The water cup, the cups Minor Arcana. It's actually caused more shifts than I anticipated. Because that's actually been a pretty big problem with me is water in terms of that element. Like always been very dry and hot instead of where my disposition is probably more damp and cold. But yeah, but let's get into it. So the reason why I guess wanted to talk about that is because now I'm starting to see just like everyone loves to talk about the major arcana, I guess, but I know that the minor arcana tends to get a little bit neglected because it's sometimes it doesn't look as interesting, but I've noticed that they're just as important, if not more in some respects, actually. Um, anyway, we will now be getting into it. We will be, of course, starting with the Two of Swords. Just let me turn to it. All right, let's begin. Okay, peace. The moon in Libra. Arrangement, peace, restored, truth, and untruth. Sorrow and sympathy, aid to weak. Arrangement, justice, unselfishness. Also a tendency to repetition of affronts on being pardoned. Injury when meaning well. Given to petition. Also a want of tact and asking question of little moment. Talkative. Yeah, we all know that seems to be like the typical sort of zeitgeist of our current predicament. This card is ruled by the chakma of the element of air. The suit governing all intellectual manifestations is always complicated and disordered. It is subject to change as it is no other suit. It represents a general shaking up resulting from the conflict of fire and water in their marriage and proceeds when earth appears to crystallization. But the purity and exaltation of Hokmah are such that this card manifests the very best idea possible to the suit. The energy abides above the onslaught of disruption. This comparative calm is emphasized by the celestial attribution, the moon in Libra. The moon is changed, but nature is peaceful, moreover. Libra represents balance between them. They regulate the energy of the swords. In the card appears two swords crossed. They are united by a blue rose with 5 petals. This rose represents the influence of the mother, whose harmonizing influence compounds the latent antagonism native to the suit. The rose emits white rays, producing a geometrical pattern that emphasizes the equilibrium of the symbol. And just take a look at the way this is sort of like it's got a swastika. I can't what the other one going the other way is called, but yeah, the swastika is sort of in that symbolism of the card. And balance and change are actually quite important for any kind of thing if you think about it. In order for any kind of motion or any kind of experience to exist, there actually did need to be change, not just balance, but also change simultaneously. So if you think about it, the sun on the earth, in order to have persistent balance, it actually needed a constant change on top of that too. Okay, and then that actually brings peace. So you should actually probably, when you're balancing, I guess, two opposites of your being, there needs to be sort of this vacillation between light, night, day, night, light, dark, hot, cold, and I think it's the same thing how our blood pumps around our heart, right? Or the way we breathe. Breathe in, expansion. Breathe out, contraction. Same thing with the heart. Expand, contract, expand, contract. Motion is stability, and if you also look at it in wheels, for example, a wheel when it's spinning on an axle actually tends to want to stabilize and actually go straight. So there's also that to think about too. Changes stability, people. Oh yeah, and yeah, like the way a wheel stays standing up is by motion. So I think that's a really important thing to maybe keep in mind. All right, we now go into Babylon's description. Harris had not strayed very far from the basic Golden Dawn model in this card. She has replaced the red rose with a deep blue-green blossom, Libra, and she forms a stylized Greek cross using the geometrical wings we first encounter on the Princess of Swords. These wings also festoon the background of the other cards in the suit. Astrologers tell us that people who were born with Moon in Libra criticize and make judgments from a position of inviolable equilibrium. They weigh every problem and proposition with the utmost. They weigh every problem with and proposition the utmost fairness. This fortunate union of sign and planet finds a predictable, dignified home in Hokmar. The result is one of the few cards in the suit of swords that doesn't evoke groans when it appears in a tarot reading. All right. That's interesting. That is not to say that it is all goodness and light. We must remember that the natural vocation of a sword is to fight, to cut, to pierce, to kill. It is an instrument of action, just like the mind, just like the ruach, the intellectual part of the soul. It is in constant movement. Eastern mystics tell us that the mind is the great enemy. If we are to achieve profound levels of consciousness, the mind must be overcome. Fearful that its existing and controls will end, the mind resists these efforts at all costs. This is why so many cards in the suit of swords seem so frustrated, anxious, nervous, even tortured. In this case of the two of swords piece, it seems we've dodged a bullet. We must always remember, however, that for a sharp and dangerous sword, peace is just an uncharacteristic and temporary interruption from war. Yeah, and when I think about it, because we're creatures of pattern and we want stability, and usually when we are changing our patterns in particular, right, it actually involves disrupting the other pattern and it causes tension. And I think that's something that maybe it doesn't get talked about enough, right? Like these different kinds of like when you overcome old thoughts, it with new thoughts and new patterns, it causes tension and it can cause a little bit of disruption. But when you are not changing that, there's just peace. There's that consistent change and it's consistent. So someone like myself should probably keep that in mind with that in mind, because changing patterns can be a stressful and arduous task. Let's put it that way. Three of Swords, Sorrow. Let's go to that one. Oops. Bina. Disruption, interruption, separation, quarreling, sorrow, sowing of discord and strife, mischief making, sorrow and tears, yet mirth and platonic pleasures, singing, faithfulness and promises, honesty and money, transactions, selfish, anticipated, yet sometimes generous, deceitful words and repetitions, the whole according in dignity. So that's his Saturn in Libra. Being the Great Mother here rules the realm of air. This fact involves an extremely difficult doctrine which must be studied at length in the Vision and the Voice A for 14. Bina is here not in the beneficent mother completing the Trinity with Kepha and Totma. She represents the darkness of the Great Sea. This is attenuated by the celestial lordship of Saturn and Libra. This card is dark and heavy, so to speak, the womb of chaos. There is an intense lurking passion to create, but its children are monsters. This may mean the supreme transcendence of the natural order. Secrecy is here and perversion. The symbol represents the great sword of the magician. Point uppermost, it cuts the junction of two short curved swords. The impact has destroyed the rose in the background. Storm broods under implacable night. And that tends to happen quite a bit with basically sorrow needed to sort of be a thing for our existence. And the Great Mother, which is like the whole universe and womb and universe itself, also gave birth not to saints but also monsters as well, because we are all a part of one kin, one breath, one word. If we're a part of one spark, then we're just one big giant family, just like people on Olympus, but not in this incestuous sense. We are just one family, really, and we're all going to fight. Families fight. That's just, I guess, the way things are. Animals fight. There's warring tribes between ants, and there's also warring tribes between humans. Interesting to think about. Okay, Babylon. Harris is strongly affected by the Three of Swords. Please don't frighten me with the sword suit. I have obeyed in every way. I can't see how they can be wrong. The three was a fair horror and great suffering. Harris Curley, date uncertain. I wrote earlier that because they reside in the supernal triad above the abyss, All the aces, twos, and threes are happy. Obviously, sorrow does not sound like a happy card. It is very difficult for us to understand the nature of consciousness above the abyss, where the actuality of things does not exist. In this abstract atmosphere, there are no things or even forms of things, nothing but pure potential. The sorrow of this card is not the same kind of sorrow evoked by, say, the death of a loved one or the loss of a lover. It is a profound state of consciousness that, from our below the abyss point of view, we can only attempt to describe. Sorrow falls pitifully short of an accurate description, but is probably the best word in the English language can offer us. Ignorant for a moment the astrological aspect of the card, let's consider the unique Kabbalistic factors that make Three of Swords to be sorrow. Swords represent Yetzirah, the formative world, but sorry, there can be no forms in Bina or anywhere above the abyss. Swords also represents Ruach, the intellect. Intellect and reason cannot exist above the abyss. So that's a really interesting thing. So things like fire and water exist in above the abyss, but not not earth or air. It's unmanifest because air and earth are basically, so earth is like material matter. So, this book, for example, that's manifestation, and your thoughts, even though they don't exist, but they're there. You think them and you run them through, and that's where it is. And emotions and thoughts and anger and all that other kind of thing. Thought does manifest itself. Without forms or reason, the mind must give way to our consciousness higher than itself. The Three of Swords represents the wondrous trance of sorrow that first enlightened the Buddha. We should all be so lucky to draw sorrow from the deck. See chapter 20 for the journal. Okay, so I think all that's really trying to say is that in order to sort of transcend this plane, we need a sort of we can't have mind entering into it too much. And that's where fire, like if we're just sort of guided by the mystery of fire and water rather than air and earth, then in a sense we're actually we're actually almost complete. But I think what's even more trippy and a little bit weird is we still need the earth and the air to sort of reintegrate back into that original unity. And that's but I'm not too sure if that's even possible. Let's put it that way. Now we go into the Four of Swords. It is truce. Rest from sorrow, yet after and through it. Peace from and after war. Relaxation of anxiety. Quietness, rest, ease, and plenty yet after struggle. Goods of this life. Abundance modified by dignity as is usual. I think that's the 49-petaled rose right there, actually. The number 4, Hesed, is here manifested in the realm of the intellect. Hesed refers to Jupiter, who rules in Libra in the decanate. Bleh. The sum of these symbols is therefore without opposition. Hence, the card proclaims the idea of authority in the intellectual world. It is the establishment of dogma and law concerning it. It represents our refuge from mental chaos, chosen in an arbitrary manner. It argues for convention. The hilts of the Four Swords are at the corner of a St. Andrew's cross. Their shape suggests fixation and rigidity. Their points are sheathed in a rather large rose of 49 petals representing social harmony. Here, too, is compromise. There you go. Minds too indolent or too cowardly to think out their own problems hail joyfully this policy of appeasement. As always, the 4 is the term. As is the case, there is no true justification for repose. Its disturbance by the 5 holds no promise of advance. Its static sham go pell-mell in the melting pot. The issue is mere mess, usually signalized by voided stench, but it has to be done. It's weird to think that the truce card here is almost painted in a very negative light, it seems. Not too sure how to understand that, but we'll continue. Okay, so the Babylon. The Four of Swords is perhaps the most beautiful of the small card swords. Harris executes a textbook use of the color scales and offers a portrait of balance and order. She writes to Crowley, I think it would be a good plan if you could arrange to come here one day next week and see the swords. I have a superstitious horror of bringing them all unbalanced to London. Hesed is the sphere of Jupiter and serves as a gracious but authoritative host to Jupiter and Libra. Equilibrium and justice are definitely key words for this card. But Crowley tells us that it also brings with it the establishment of dogma and the law concerning it. Swords are weapons, and weapons discharge their design by virtue of the disciplines of war, not of peace. The kind of truce the Four of Swords monitors is a peace enforced by the threat of violence, and as such will be short-lived. The Four Swords are arranged as a St. Andrew's cross, suggesting to Crowley fixation and rigidity. Their points meet at the center of a large rose of 49 petals that Crowley tells us represents social harmony. It is the concord of conformity and compromise. However, that character is a culture I would rather blindly surrender to authority than to face the challenges of liberty. So, I guess, in a sense, truce is it's almost like a resignation to thought, to whatever is above, under the wings of Tetragrammaton. And that it's, depending on the dignity that it's under, it's actually not great. So, like, for example, if you think of, like, some places like Adolf Hitler's Germany, like, there was a truce, I guess, where people sort of went along with their lives, but it probably wasn't good for them, being, going about their day on methamphetamine and all that other kind of thing, which was definitely not great. So, when there's a truce and, I guess, resignation to what's above you, it is not always the best thing. It's just simply you've come to a compromise, you've come to like a rest and repose and that kind of thing. But other than that, it's not that great. According to dignity as usual. Okay. So let's now go to Five of Swords, defeat. That one doesn't look great either. Okay, this one's a bit of a meaty one. Contest finished and decided against the person. Failure, defeat, anxiety, trouble, poverty, avarice, grieving after gain, laborious unresting, loss and vileness of nature, malicious, slanderous, lying, spiteful, and tale-bearing, a busybody and separator of friends, hating to see peace and love between others. Cruel yet cowardly, thankless and unreliable, clever and quick in thought and speech, feeling of pity easily roused but unenduring. Damn, that's not a very nice card, is it? Venus in Aquarius. Gebra, as always, produces disruption, but as Venus here rules Aquarius, weakness rather than excess of strength seems the cause of disaster. The intellect has been enfeebled by sentiment. The defeat is due to pacifism. Treachery also may be implied. The hilts of the swords from the inverted pentagram always a symbol of somewhat sinister tendency. Here, matters are even worse. None of the hilts resemble any of the others, and their blades are crooked or broken. They give the impression of drooping. Only the lowest of the sword's points upwards, and this is the least effective of the weapons. The rose of the previous card has been altogether disintegrated. The historian is happy to observe two perfect illustrations of the mode of this card, and the last in the birth of the Aeon of Osiris, Horus. He will note the decay of such virtue as characterized Sparta and Rome, ending in the establishment of the Pax Romana. A virtue decline, corruption disintegrated to the empire from within. Epicene cults, such as those of Dionysus, in its degraded form of Attis, of Adonis, of Cybele, and the false Demeter, and the prostituted Isis, replaced the sterner rites of the true solar phallic gods. Until finally, the masters, having lost the respect and so the control of the plebs, native and alien, the lowest of all the slave cults, dressed up in the fables of the violence of the parasitic races, swept over the known world and drenched it in foul darkness for 500 years. He will delight to draw close parallels with the cognate phenomena displayed before the present generation. So, I think it's just referring to the rise of Christianity in Rome and how it sort of putrefied it and that kind of thing more than anything. And people, like, Rome was already having problems before Christianity came about, but I think it should be noted, if you read, like, St. Augustine's City of God, he does actually, there is a pretty strong mention around his time where, like, Christianity as a influence was blamed for the fall of Rome. And when you think about it, Back then, like I imagine, like religions to a certain extent were like equivalent to political parties. I mean, let's be honest, it was just intertwined with the state, but now we have religion and politics sort of separate. But I don't see them as really that different, to be honest. If you're like one of the MAGA-peds, demo cunts, or whatever the fuck you want to as heavily identify yourselves with, like you're a religious fanatic in principle. Man, I fucking hate politics, man. I hate it so goddamn much, and it's why I try to avoid talking about it because because it's tiresome, it's a waste of energy, and it's fucking pathetic. So I avoid it at all costs. This card represents 5 unmatched bent and damaged swords forming an adverse pentagram. This pentagram of defeat is projected upon a field of Horus's geometric and wildly asymmetric wings, some of which form swastikas. As this card was painted at the very heart of England's struggle with Nazi Germany, it is easy to speculate that Horus was either consciously or unconsciously projecting magical defeat on this hated enemy. Her concern with the design is clear to words to Crowley. I only hope the swords are alright, for I can't do them again. I have followed your instructions with meticulous care. Popular opinion holds that the reverse pentagram is an evil symbol. The Golden Dawn even cautioned its initiates never to use it magically. Be that as it may, it is principle of superstition to believe that any symbol in and of itself can be either good or evil. The reverse pentagram can be used to symbolize an infinite number of perfectly innocuous concepts. However, in this case, it really does mean trouble. Venus rules Aquarius, and for a moment... actually, you know, I'll just go back to where they said... The reverse pentagram can be used to symbolize an infinite number of perfectly innocuous concepts. So, one of them is just the descent into matter. Okay? The other way is to symbolize birth, in a way, even. Because man has his roots in heaven, and his leaves on the ground. He's like a reverse tree almost. So there's that to think about. And if you look in secret teachings of all ages, there's like, can't remember what tradition it is, but they had some kind of diagram where the trees and the leaves and everything was actually in the ground and its roots were at heaven. And apparently that was used to describe what man is. So it could do that as well. So yeah, don't always look at all inverted pentagrams or some other bullshit as something evil. I think the only reason it sort of came that way is, the sort of Golden Dawn superstitions, and on top of that, there would have been the thing with Anton LaVey obviously sporting the inverted pentagram of Baphomet in it, like signifying evil, even though Satan just means adversary. Because if I'm Satan, you're Satan, they're Satan, we're all Satan. Believe it or not, we're all Satan. Whether you like it or not. Venus rules Aquarius, and for a moment, she is very happy to have him as her date. After all, they're both pacifists. They are friendly, mellow, and sentimental couple. Unfortunately, this sensitive pair has shown up at the wrong party. A terrible fight has broken out in a very rough and armed area of Kabbalahville. Gabriel, the House of Mars, which is located in Yetzirah, the world of swords. Naturally, Venus and Aquarius volunteer to be peacemakers, but they are just too nice, too peaceful, too weak to handle themselves in this violent neighborhood. The inevitable result is defeat. Sorry, kids, I hear things are quieted down in Tibereth. And that is the next card we are going to. Old Lon Milo always has a nice sense of humor. All right, probably one of the most beautiful cards for swords is Science. That's Mercury in Aquarius. Let's begin. Success after anxiety and trouble, self-esteem, beauty, conceit, but sometimes modesty, therewith dominance, patience, labor, etc. Tipra shows the full establishment and balance of the idea of the suit. This is particularly the case with this card, as the intellect itself also refers to the number 6. Mercury in Aquarius represents the celestial energy influencing the cherub of the man, thus showing intelligence and humanity. But there is much more than this in the symbol. The perfect balance of all mental and moral faculties, hardly one and almost impossible to hold in an ever-changing world, declares the idea of science in its fullest interpretation. The hilts of the swords, which are very ornamental, are in the form of a hexagram. Their points touch the outer petals of a red rose upon a golden cross of 6 squares, thus showing the rosy cross as the central secret of scientific truth. And maybe that's why I've had plenty of synchronicities in with the rosy cross, me personally. But this one's going to be rather short, which is interesting. But we'll keep it to Chapter 8. We were introduced to the small rose cross as the heart of Hermetic Rose Cross. At the heart of the Hermetic Rose Cross. I presumptuously labelled it the Rose Cross of Being. In the 6 of Dis, this figure is found at the very centre of the card, and 6 matched and balanced swords focused towards their... fuck's sake, man. And 6 matched and balanced swords focus their powers of analysis and discrimination upon the mysteries of being. This is science. Very important. The powers and discrimination upon the mysteries of being. This is science. So that when we talk about mysteries of being, we're not just talking about like our own self and our psychology and things such as like of that nature, but it's also like matter. Like matter in the study of like physical phenomena is the study of being in of itself. And I think that's always a pretty nice thing to look into. The conservative beauty of this card announces that the shining balance of Tippereth brings a much-needed measure of nobility and clear-headedness to the suit of swords. The formula that creates the character of this card couldn't be more auspicious for the suit of swords. In the human soul, the counterpart of Yetzirah is the Ruach, or the intellect. On the Tree of Life, the center of the Ruach radiates from Tippereth. Finally, an air planet, Mercury, finds itself in the fixed air sign of Aquarius. Someone with Mercury in Aquarius in his or her natal horoscope is said to have a keen analytical mind and an extraordinary ability to concentrate. He or she is also intensely curious and enjoys examining both sides of a question. Sounds like a scientist, doesn't it? I mean, my Mercury is not in Aquarius, man, but I fucking love science. My Mercury is actually in Libra. So that's an interesting one. So we're done with that. Now we go over to Netzach, Futility. Is this one? Okay. Partial success, yielding when victory is within grasp, as if the last reserves of strength were used up. Inclination to lose when the point of gain through not continuing the effort. Love of abundance, fascinated by display, given to compliments, affronts, and insolences, and inspire upon others. Inclined to betray competences not always intentionally, rather fecular and unreliable. Not good, and that's the moon in Aquarius. Netzach in the suit of swords does not represent such catastrophe as in the other suits, for Netzach or the Sephirah of Venus means victory. There is therefore a modifying influence, and this is attenuated by the celestial rule of the moon in Aquarius. The intellectual wreckage of this card is thus not so vehement as in the 5. There is vacillation, a wish to compromise, a certain toleration, but in certain circumstances the result may be more disastrous than ever. This naturally depends upon the success of the policy. This is always in doubt as long as there exists violent, uncompromising forces which take it as a natural prey. This card, like the 4, suggests the policy of appeasement. The symbol shows 6 swords with their hilts in crescent formation, their points below the center of the card, impinging upon a blade of a much larger upon thrusting sword, as if there were a contest between the many feeble and the one strong. He strives in vain. And I think this is like what sort of happens when you sort of try to go against too many small people. Like the ants in A Bug's Life do eventually overpower the grasshoppers. Let's put it that way. And it can happen any time too. Because really, all the powers that be, they all rely on our compliance and us to play along. They're actually way more reliant on us than we are on them. And yeah, those emergent systems are pretty fucked. All right, Hod, Eight of Swords, interference. Here we go. Okay, that's a bit of a weird description. There's more here than there is here for once, which is a bit weird. Jupiter and Gemini. Okay, too much force applied to small things. Too much attention to detail at the expense of the principal or more important points. When ill-dignified, these qualities produce malice, pettiness, and domineering characteristics. Patience in detail of study, great care in some things, counterbalanced by equal disorder in others. Impulsive, equally fond of giving or receiving money or presents. Generous, clever, acute, selfish, and without strong feeling of affection. Admires wisdom, yet applies it to small and unworthy objects. That's not good. The number 8 Hod here signifies lack of persistence in matters of the intellect and of contest. Good fortune, however, attends even these weakened efforts. Thanks to the influence of Jupiter in Gemini ruling the Deacon, yet the will is constantly thwarted by accidental interference. The center of the card is occupied by 2 long swords pointed downward. They are crossed by 6 small swords, 3 on each side. They remind one of weapons peculiar to their countries or their cults. We see here the kris, the kukri, the skirmasaks, the dagger, the machete, and the yatagan. Yeah, so a lot of different blades, as you can see. Yeah, so I guess interference happens quite a lot in our own modern way of life because there's heaps of distractions. There's heaps of, like, we sometimes don't see the forest for the trees. We sometimes don't see the bigger picture, or we need to find the devil in the details and all that other kind of thing. But as always, it's always a matter of balance. And I think the sword is the hardest thing to balance of all. On the pentagram, because it's the basis of pretty much how everything sort of functions, because you got to remember that the sword and like Mercury, it's the mediator between heaven and earth, so between the unmanifest world and the manifest world in of itself. So balancing those two, because if you have too much light, you also go blind. If you have too much darkness, you're also blind. The only way that you can sort of, I guess, have any kind of clear sight is to balance light and dark. Consider that. Don't look into the nuke, guys. You'll be full of light. And blinded by it too. Alright. Harris outdid herself in strict adherence to the colour scales in this card. One would not expect a marriage of these colours to appear in art prior to the psychedelic black light styles of the 1960s. The blades of the sword seem actually to glow in the dark. Okay. As in most of the small cards of this suit, the swords appear upon a field of stylized wings here looking almost like pinwheels. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So, like, I've said this many times, like the swastika is thought, and it's actually what presides over everything, and it's why Nazi Germany used it symbolically. It's actually a really powerful symbol in Hindu, Jewish, Native American, and all of it. It's practically a universal symbol, and I guess the Malta cross is another sort of form of a swastika. In of itself, it's just not, it doesn't have directions of it, but it still in a sense represents thought. And when I think about it, when you're modulating light and dark, think about the Templar flag, for example. Yeah, cool. Wait, hold on, sorry guys. So I want you to take a look at this. So when you look at this flag, for example, what do you see? So if that was to, say, be the swastika, it's the modulating force between light and dark. And I think the reason why the Hindus would have wanted to put it look like a windmill or whatever in most cultures is because it needs to imply some kind of motion, and it's also it's on the cup as well. It's there's actually a lot of symbolism with like the cross, with like Queensland as well. So like I'll show you here. So like as you can see, if you look at two of these different images, so like this is the state of Queensland, and you can see like this is the cup, and it's got that Templar cross over it, and it's got that descending dove. And over here, you've actually got the Malta cross as well, but it's got the queen, like the crown of the queen, and there's a lot of weird things that can be implied with that. And but what I find really interesting is yeah, basically that sort of that ubiquitous sort of presence of the Malta cross, because I think it's reasonably close to the idea of a swastika. Anyway, we're sort of getting off track because but I do think that it was really important. And I think that was a really important part. Anyway, let's get back to it. So where were we? Actually, look at this card and look what it implies. Jupiter's in Gemini indicates an element of luck in intellectual pursuits. Hod is in the sphere of Mercury, who rules Gemini, as it does the 8 of the other suits. However, Hod's imbalance and lowly position on the tree of life throws a wet blanket on what otherwise might have been a fortunate coupling. There's not enough mercurial energy left to put up much of a fight. And then the suit of swords, fighting is what it is all about. Crowley says, the will is constantly thwarted by accidental interference. And oh my god, that is the fucking story of my life, man. It's pretty poignant, this card, actually. Constantly interfered. Like, I think it's because when there's not enough sort of power, the will is constantly thwarted by accidental interference. You know, life things coming up, you fucking get distracted by some stupid brain rot on Facebook or whatever. You delay it, like you like there's constant interference in the will, and we can't keep doing it. Otherwise, we're gonna be in massive trouble. And yeah, the Eight of Swords does not show much patience or persistence. If its influence is to be overcome, those qualities will need to be developed and introduced into the equation. Otherwise, everything will most definitely serve to interfere. So yeah, we got to really, I guess, develop our faculties if we really want to take this, take our will to the next level. Because the thing about thought is it works for us or against us. Thought destroys thought, and thought creates thought. It's why Aquarius is such an important part of it, and it's why we're in the age of Aquarius, where thought is pretty much the principal thing of the day, as opposed to the watery Pisces. Anyway, we are now moving on to Yesod and cruelty. Apparently, this is the fucking worst one. All right. Despair, cruelty, pitilessness, malice, suffering, want, loss, misery, burden, oppression, labor, subtlety and craft, dishonesty, lying and slander, yet also obedience, faithfulness, patience, selfishness, etc., according to dignity. God help you for people who have Mars and their Gemini. God help you. Anyway. The number 9, Yesod, brings back the energy to the central pillar of the tree of life. The previous disorder is now rectified. But the general idea of the suit has been constantly degenerating. The sword no longer represents pure intellect so much as the automatic stirring of heartless passions. Consciousness has fallen into a realm unenlightened by reason. This is the world of the unconscious primitive instincts of the psychopath, of the fanatic. The celestial ruler is Mars in Gemini, a crude rage of hunger operating without restraint. Although its form is intellectual, it is the temper of the Inquisitor. Oh dear. The symbol shows 9 swords of varying lengths, all striking downwards to a point. They are jagged and rusty, poison and blood drip from their blades. There is, however, a way of dealing with this card. The way of passive resistance, resignation, the acceptance of martyrdom. Nor is an alien form of that of implacable revenge. Okay. Oh dear, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. If you have a hangover, don't look at the Nine of Swords. You won't be ready to deal with this one. Who knows what Harris was doing with the colours, but she succeeded in making them perfectly nauseating. As if to underscore the degeneration of the suit, the pinwheel wings are being washed down the wall of the background by what looks like drops of poison. Yeah, you're right. The whole scene induces dizziness. I can almost taste the drops of blood dripping from the swords. It is kind of a surprise to find this horrible mess in Middle Pillar Yesod. After all, the other nines are perfectly lovely fellows. But even the balance and stability of Yesod can't come to the rescue of all action Mars and all talk Gemini. In the lowest burning out resignation of Yetzirah, the world of thought. Watch out, it is Crowley warned. Agony of mind. The only outlet for expression for this card is just ugly meanness. There is not even enough subtlety of mind left. Crowley points out to take sadistic pleasure for its own cruelty. Consciousness has fallen into a realm unenlightened by reason. This is the world of the unconscious instincts of the psychopath or the fanatic. That's not nice. Anyway, we are now getting to Malkuth. And we are about to do that one. That will actually be very close to finishing. Cool. Ten of Swords. Ruin. Almost a worse symbol than the Knight of Swords. Undisciplined, warring force, complete disruption and failure, ruin of all plans in the projects, disdain, insolence, and impertinence. Yet mirth and jollity therewith. A mar plot, loving to overthrow the happiness of others, a repeater of things, given to much unprofitable speech, and of many words, yet clever, eloquent, etc., according to dignity. This one's a bit of a mighty one. The number 10, Malkuth, as always, represents in the culmination of the unmitigated energy of the idea. It shows reason run mad, ramshackle right of soulless mechanism. It represents the logic of lunatics and, for the most part, of philosophers. It is reason divorced from reality. The card is also ruled by the sun in Gemini, but the mercurial, airy quality of the sign serves to disperse his rays. This card shows the disruption and disorder of harmonious and stable energy. The hilts of the swords occupy the position of the Sephiroth, but the points 1 to 5 and 7 to 9 touch and shadow the central sword. 6, which represents the sun. That's not good. The heart, the child of Hokama and Bina. The 10 swords is also in splinters. It is the ruin of the intellect and end of all mental and moral qualities. In the Yi King, Soul in Gemini is the virtue of the 43rd hexagram Kwai, the watery modification of the phallus. Also, but the interlacing interpretations, the harmony of these two same trigrams. The significance is perfectly harmonious with that of the Ten of Swords. It represents the damping down of the creative impulse, weakness, corruption, or mirage affecting the principle itself. But viewing the hexagram as a weapon or method of procedure, it counsels the ruler to purge the state of unworthy officers. Curiosity, the invention of written characters to replace knotted strings, is described among Chinese scholars to use of the hexagram by the sages. Gemini is ruled by Thoth. 10 is the key of Naples' arrangement. And Apollo, Sol, is the patron of literature and the arts. So his suggestion might appear at least no less suitable to Kabbalistic correspondences than that to the double emphasis of the water and the sun. Right. Apart from this, however, the parallelism is complete. Can you find the 10 swords, 10 swords and 10 of swords? It's very difficult. Crowley tries to help us. And it is difficult, actually. Yeah, you can see it. So, like, if you look over here, so it's tiny, though. And it's sort of on the hilt of a heart, in a sense. With all the other Sephiroth. And sort of being counterbalanced by those ones, too. The hilt of swords occupies the positions of the Sephiroth by point 1 to 5 to 9, touches and shadow bright central 6, which represents the sun, the heart, the child of Hokma and Bina. Their 10th sword is also in splinters. Alright. There are 3 swords that form the middle pillar, the lowest having a crescent moon on the handle. The next sword is placed upon the blade of the first and has an orb as part of its handle. The blade of the second sword is in place upon the heart-shaped pommel of the central sword, whose blade is broken into 3 pieces. It is difficult to put a good spin on this card. Harris here for herself reports, I've done the Ten of Swords and promptly Russia takes up arms. Along with the other tens, the Ten of Swords can't generate any lower without completely changing suits. Sol and Mercury ruled Gemini. It brings a complete identification with the mind and the intellect, which in this card are the very process of being destroyed. It is the ruin of the intellect, right? Crowley tones, and even of all mental and moral qualities. Ouch. Yeah, because we tend to really destroy the mind through identifying with the mind more than anything, paradoxically. So if you have too much identification with mind, then you will ruin your mind. And with that in mind, I want you to keep it in mind that I hope you don't mind that this is the end of it for this tarot deep dive. So definitely got a bit further this time around. Back's a bit fucked, but we're all good. And yeah, so that actually brings us to video 31, I think, which means we're very close to coming to the very end of it. Yeah, man, like there's a lot to think about when you consider how air sort of plays a role in the way we sort of do things, and how much it actually, because it's the manifestation, because ultimately air and intellect are manifestation. They're the primary manifestation more than anything. Thought is primary manifestation, and then the princess is just the reflection more than anything. And it is our job to carry the princess up to the throne of Bina, or the father in Keter, the priestess, as it's sort of shown in the Gnostic Mass. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys fucking watch these videos. Well, I look at it, and I've looked at my stats. Like, I'm still going to do this to the very end, because I'm going to change, obviously, subject soon, because I'll need to actually start doing other things than this. But I'm so happy I've gone through this, man, because it's actually helped me immensely in ways that that I never would have anticipated. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you really enjoy this content, subscribe, share, comment, or don't. Do whatever the fuck you want. But as always, every man and woman is responsible for their redemption and salvation. See you later.